Mike Barrett, Mike Rice, and the Oregonians' Joe Freeman starting us out here. Terry Stotts, the head coach of the Trailblazers, will be with us at the bottom of the hour. Joe, thanks for coming in.
Anytime. Good to see you guys. How's it going?
We missed you in Minnesota.
Yes. I wish I could say I missed you guys, too. I missed you guys, but I did not miss going to Minnesota.
I was going to say, you were very fortunate that you didn't have to go.
Yeah, the wife and I spent a lovely weekend in McMinnville, had a little relaxing weekend away together. It was,
your own little all-star break.
Oh, it was awesome. It's beautiful. Beautiful there.
It is beautiful.
Oh. Yeah.
Anywhere out there.
Yeah.
God's country.
Yeah, it was the first time I had spent any significant time out there. We had a good time.
All right, one of your, buddies, a friend of ours, Kerry Eggers, put out a tweet a little while ago, and the reason I bring this up is because he said if everybody's concerned about the division race, and we'll get to Saturday and we'll get to Wednesday, he says, and he's right, did the math, if OKC finishes 19-0, they get to 54 wins.
Boy, that's a big if.
I know.
I'm starting off with a big if here.
Blazers can clinch the division by going 14-7. That would give them 55. Is the race, and by the way, 14-7 right now, considering the schedule, maybe you take that. Is this race completely over in the Northwest Division?
Well, I mean, you can never say never or whatever the phrase is, but it's all but over, right? I mean, that math speaks for itself. But also, KD's not back for Oklahoma City, is he?
No.
And despite everything that Russell Westbrook's doing, how much success have they had over the last couple of weeks? I know he didn't win Player of the Week 2 weeks ago because they didn't win. I think they went 1-3 or something like that. So.
And that's a week ago. That week killed them.
Right.
Because that's when the Blazers have home court because we won the series.
Yeah. It
went to 9. Yeah, it was a 2-for-1.
That was a big win.
Yeah. And for my money, that's what ended it right there because Oklahoma City is not going to think about catching us. They're going to think about staying healthy in order to win the first round playoff. So their minds aren't going to be on.
Even beyond that, I was going to say they're just looking to get in. I mean, New Orleans is kind of pecking there. They've got Anthony Davis coming back, and they've kind of underachieved all year. But if I'm Oklahoma City, I'm looking at that 8 spot trying to get in.
Absolutely.
Then you go from there. The division is the last thing I think.
And if they get healthy, who wants to play them in the first round?
You know, that's what I've been saying for weeks is you look at the Western Conference and everybody wants to know who's, you see the standings right now, and Golden State, for as outstanding and fun as they have been all season, their reward for this is a date with Oklahoma City and Durant and Westbrook in the first round?
Yeah.
And that remade bench? Are you kidding me?
And that looks like maybe the only matchup that's set at this point.
Right.
I mean, if OKC gets in and beats out New Orleans, but of any matchup that you look at and you kind of think, you look at that, because we're not going to know the middle ones.
No.
We know that Golden State's going to finish 1. Mm-hmm. I mean, pretty much. And it looks like you would think OKC's going to finish 8. So of all the matchups, that looks like the one that is going to happen.
It just speaks to how insane the Western Conference is and how really once you get those pairings, whatever they are, it's flip a coin. It's going to be that close.
And for a while there last week, the way San Antonio was playing, I thought OKC would catch them.
Yeah.
And who wants to finish second and play them for 7th?
Oh.
That's when the Blazers were, trying to catch Memphis.
Well, still are just right there. Memphis is playing in Chicago tonight.
Right. And but there are teams that –
and the Blazers still have a head-to-head with Memphis left.
Yeah.
Now,
boy, it's
Memphis
at the end.
The series
and it's at the end of that long trip, too, on a second
back-to-back. Yeah.
Back-to-back. So, you can't wish for any team – in the West, in the NBA, my feeling is because all of a sudden, this team's better than I thought they are. Even Dallas, who the Blazers have played well against, all of a sudden they could come alive. Wilson Chandler back, or
maybe Rondo finds it at the end.
Chandler Parsons,
right?
The Wesley Matthews injury, we haven't really talked to you since then. Took everybody's breath away, and of course we flew out the next day and didn't have him on the trip, and players hung his jersey in the locker, which was a cool gesture. We've seen some tweets from him. I know he was out at practice today. There are people nationally who have kind of, and we see the injury once again here, people nationally who kind of have now written the Blazers off. But with Aaron Afflalo, and of course we've talked about this a lot, how good the trade looks now, what do you think the biggest challenge is going forward to Aaron and company to fill the shoes left by Wesley Matthews?
Well, everybody talks about how similar their games are, and obviously the way they play is similar. The things they do, the strengths that they bring are similar, but Wesley's presence in the locker room and his chemistry, which we've talked about and I've written about so many times over the last 2 years, Wesley really helps that starting five click. And really it trickles on down from there because he's just so important in the locker room and so important behind the scenes. And I don't think a guy can come in February and immediately establish that level of chemistry and that closeness, that bond with all his players. So that's going to be really difficult, if not impossible, to duplicate. But I think, and you've heard Aaron say this too, the best he can do is come in and be himself and bring what he does. And that's all you can ask for. And you know, I think everybody's immediate reaction after Wesley went down was, well, thank God Neil traded for Aaron, because where would you be without him? And so I think that's why you can't immediately write the Blazers off. But where we now move is beyond that. The Blazers will be fine with Afflalo, and he'll fill in admirably, and he'll be a nice replacement for Wesley's. But what happens to that next tier? Because now it's on C.J. McCollum. Now it's on Alonzo G., the unknown there. It's on more on Darrell Wright. Alan Crabb, right. So all these guys are going to be dependent on to do more. And, you know, we've heard a lot about how good CJ is and the potential that he has. And I really think, as much as anyone, this is an opportunity for him to kind of prove that all that hype was worthy. And he'll get a golden opportunity here to show what he has.
It's interesting how Stotts looks, and we're going to ask him tonight when he's on the show, how much does he want to move up in the standings? Because that will determine how much he plays these young guys.
You want to know what his answer is going to be?
He's going to move up.
He wants to win games.
Yes, he wants to win games. But if he wants to win games, they're going to shorten the rotation to maybe 8. And now the guys you just mentioned won't get as much time to develop into something that'll help them in the playoffs and more Stotts' confidence in them. So it's going to be interesting how he plays those guys and how they develop to help them in the, because right now we're back to where almost we were last year. The young guys have improved, but they still don't have Stotts' confidence enough that they'll help us in the playoffs. We had it set when we made the trade for Aaron. Right. So now it's not set any longer, so you've got to help out. And I heard today, it was amazing, that complete blowout of the tendon, it only has happened 18 times in the last 20 years in the NBA. Now, there's been partial tears, but nothing like Wes has had. And I don't even want to mention the stat of how many players have come back and have been full, like Dominique Wilkins has come back.
Well, Chauncey Billups did it.
Yeah, but Chauncey never was the same player.
He was much older, though, too, wasn't he?
Yeah. Yes. He was like 32 or something.
And that'll be certainly stuff for us to talk down the road and looking in the offseason and stuff. But back to the point you were just trying to make is, one thing, if you do ask Terry about the situation, I think one thing he would say is that CJ has earned a chance.
Yeah.
And he deserves a chance to get minutes and to see what he can do. And I think the organization from Neil Olshey on down not only is invested in CJ, but they really believe in CJ, and they're quite bullish on him. And so I think you're going to see a more patient Terry Stotts over the next 2-3 weeks or however long to really extend a longer leash to CJ to see what he can do.
Now, would it be okay if I said to Terry tonight, Joe Freeman says you should be more patient?
I didn't say that I think he should be. I said I think he will be.
Don't start this game with him, because he's tossed me under the bus so many times.
Because you know how writers kind of look for things.
Oh, yeah. We're looking to stir the pot, right?
Hey. Right, you're good for another segment, right?
Oh, yeah.
All right, we're taking a break. Joe Freeman from the Oregonian, our guest. Terry Stotts comes in bottom of the hour. You've got Trailblazers Courtside. More after this. Welcome back to Trailblazers Courtside. Joe, one more thing we were talking about Wesley and that night. And you've covered this team, and you've covered lots of athletes. And there were a lot of people, some writers were kind of surprised that he came out and spoke the way he did. I don't think anybody who knows Wesley was necessarily surprised. That showed some guts, though, for a guy to come back to his locker and want to speak after something like that, being that disappointed, and he looked so authentic in the way he handled it. What was your take on the night?
I just thought it even further illustrated the character And he's just a good guy. He really is. He's a good person, and particularly in the NBA, he's a guy that an everyday man can relate to. And I think him coming out, it showed. It further illustrated how high his character is, and also it reflected his leadership, because a lot of times guys don't want to deal with that. They want to kind of put it off. They don't want to accept reality. You're going through. He even said, "Look, I'm having trouble processing this right now."
Well, and we were getting a glimpse inside at the process as it was kind of going through his mind.
And it was a very somber, solemn locker room, and I think you felt it from the team. I think you felt it from the media, to be honest.
Yeah, everybody.
You really. This is a guy that, as much as any player, embodies everything that a trailblazer is. You look back. I mean, we've got these JK25s around here. Obviously,
exactly.
I mean, you look at a guy who is close to a Jerome Kersey type player, and what you go around Portland and you talk to Blazers fans, you hear so many people say that Wesley's their favorite player, and I think a lot of it is that underdog kind of mentality, and that guy who's, I mean, how many knee burns has he collected over the last 5 years? How many he wears those arm pads and those stuff now, but if he didn't, I mean, how many scrapes and bruises would he have? How many times is he diving into the front row? You could put a whole highlight package together on just that. And those are the types of plays that don't show up in the box score, obviously, but it fuels that atmosphere in the crowd, it fuels the fans, and it fuels his teammates. The guys feed off that.
How about he's at practice today? If you look at Steve Nash, he got hurt, and they haven't seen him in a Laker in L.A. in months. I mean, Wesley Matthews, could you see him not backing this team and not being in the locker room no matter what his foot is like?
Well, not to that point. Today at practice, he was out there.
He was
wearing a walking boot, and he was kind of messing around shooting a couple J's. But also, if you looked closer, he spent about 10 minutes with Alonzo G. He had the iPad out, and he was going over sets, and he was pointing around like, you need to be here, and he was trying to – this is a new guy who isn't familiar with all the plays, and so he's trying to catch him up to speed. And, I've joked around with him a lot about how I think he's going to be a coach one day.
Yeah.
And he emphatically says that he won't. That I think when his players, his career's over, he's done with it. But I have a hard time seeing him step away that easily whenever that time arises. I think he's got coach written all over.
We discussed, obviously about the horrible timing, not only for the team but for Wesley coming up on a free agent summer. Can you envision a scenario that does not have him in a Blazer uniform next year?
Well, I can, only because I always could. I know that Neil O'Shea wants to bring him back, and he wants to bring the starting five back as is. I mean, that's how he set this team up. That's how it's successfully gotten to where it is the last 2 years. And I think if you asked anybody in that group, they would want everybody to come back. But
doesn't this change the whole dynamics of it with his injury, this type of injury?
Well, on a couple levels, and a caveat to what I just said is Wes was always the one guy who could maybe price himself out based upon how much money they wanted to invest in him. I mean, he led the league. You guys know he led the league in threes. He's among the best shooting guards in the NBA before he got hurt. The classic, the new age 3-and-D kind of player.
So in a strange way, does the injury make it more likely
maybe,
that he's a Blazer?
I don't know. When you look at it from a Portland perspective, it's how much do you want to invest in him, A, and then B, in light of what you mentioned, how many guys come back from this? So does that temper how much money you offer him? And then what is the market for him from the rest of the league?
Yes. That's the big question.
It's a tough situation, and I don't think we really have a handle on that right now. And from the other perspective also is the CBA is going up. And it's going up dramatically to as much as $90 million in the next year or two. So whatever you do sign these guys for right now, maybe in 2, 3, 4 years, it's not that bad of a contract. It doesn't take up as much room as you think it might. So,
and it's funny because people screamed about his contract when he got it in the first place.
It's a bargain now.
Right.
It's a bargain now. And, going back to what you said, if there's one guy who is poised to shatter this glass ceiling of what people can do with this injury, I think it's Wesley Matthews, honestly.
And I've heard people, and I've talked to a couple of doctors about this, they say some injuries, you had them 20 years ago, pretty much it's the same now, the treatment, the technology, but medical science now, they say with Achilles, they're doing things that they weren't doing 5 years ago as far as repairing them. So, and again, we around here, we got to know knees really well. This year, we've all become educated on thumbs, wrists, and fingers, and now Achilles tendons.
Yeah.
So
I wish there was something else to talk about.
I know. Well, and again, we've just now, as you said, we're still kind of processing
Yeah.
through this. But going forward, and
we're still trying to figure out how will it affect the Blazers in the playoffs.
Absolutely. Well, that's when things become bump and grind and defense becomes more important. But Aaron Afflalo, as an on-the-ball defender, is probably a guy you could handpick out and say he maybe is the most like and can have the most impact like a Wesley Matthews. So going forward, and Aaron's temperament. I mean, Neil Olshey, very careful who he lets around this team, who he's going to bring in. He seems to be, if you had to pick a replacement, I don't want to say the perfect replacement, but because you can't replace Wesley, but he's a good Band-Aid in that situation. And I don't want to undersell Aaron in that case, but of the type of player, he would seem to be a real good fit.
No question, and like we talked about a little while ago, they have similar games, similar abilities. They approach the game in similar ways. Both very hard workers behind the scenes, and in many ways, while this is certainly horrible for the Blazers, for Aaron Afflalo, it actually makes his adjustment a bit easier. He was going through an adjustment of, now I have to learn to come off the bench and learn to fill this role and try to figure out how I fit in with this other unit. And now, he just goes out and does what he's.
But I'd rather have him trying to figure that out than put all the pressure on CJ, because if that second unit, he's going to be part of that 8 or 9 man rotation. And he's, this is big shoes to step up now. Everyone's going to be looking at that second unit, and it's CJ's second unit right now.
Quickly, Joe, last thing. Nick Batum has been terrific since the All-Star break. We've talked about that. He's shooting over 50%, shooting over 40 from 3. He had a great first half in Minnesota, had 17 points in that game. Can he find the consistency now for the rest of the season that eluded him in the first half?
I think he can. I really, in talking with Nick, I had a long talk with him for a story I'm working on tomorrow, actually, and he's back to the Nicholas Batum that I knew the previous 2, 3, 4 years. He, for whatever reason, that break, the All-Star break, allowed him to get past whatever it was, the mental hurdles, the physical hurdles, whatever he was going through. I think it's beyond him. I think he's ready to move on, and when you look at what he's done since the break, I think his stats reflect that. And
it means something to a guy like that to win the Clipper game essentially in overtime. To
Absolutely.
Be the savior,
yeah.
And he was that guy.
Oh, it was he made or it's
amazing.
Made or assisted contributed to the last 19 points of the game, and then he hit the first bucket of the next game, so it was 21 or assist on that or something.
And they needed 13 to 15 points from Nick, and they weren't getting it at the start of the year. They were getting the rebounds and the assists, but they needed now more than ever. They need at least 15 points from Nick.
Yeah.
Joe, thanks.
No problem.
Appreciate it. We'll see you Wednesday night, Blazers Rockets. James Harden probably is the one person who's not heartbroken who will be in this town that there's no Wesley Matthews because he gave him fits.
Do you compare your beard with his?
With it? No.
Because I think your beard looks much better than.
I appreciate that. That's very kind of you. No, his is.
Right.
Yeah, that's big time.
That goes back to college. And he grew his because he said he was too lazy to shave. You had other plans in mind.
Indeed.
Yours.
Yeah.
All right. Joe Freeman, our guest from the Oregonian. Read whatever is coming out tomorrow, whatever you're working on.
Yeah, Nicholas Batum in the morning. It'll be on the blog.
We'll read it tomorrow. Check OregonLive.com, too.